Hello, my name is Bobby Farlice-Rubio, and I am a science educator here at the Fairbanks Museum and Planetarium in St. Johnsbury, Vermont. And I am a science educator, but I work at a museum, so I'm different from a normal school teacher. I really respect those folks who work with the same kids every day, but my job is very different because I work with different kids every day. Something like 15,000 kids from all around the community come to this museum, and it's a good chance that I will be one of their teachers. Whether it's out in our main hall filled with animals, or out in the field looking for newts and salamanders and frogs in a pond, or in here, which is probably one of my favorite parts of my job, teaching in the planetarium. So I have a special kind of teacher job that's very different from a normal school teacher, but there are a lot of different skills that are involved. Because I teach all of the sciences, I have to be aware of a lot of different subjects. I learn a lot from my audience, but an important part of my job is staying on top of all of the latest discoveries in outer space, or perhaps in a lab, or in a rainforest somewhere. Whenever something happens, I expect that the people who come visit me will be asking me and the folks who I work with about it. So I feel like it's part of my job to be aware of what's going on and what's the latest in the scientific world. Well, that makes my job challenging because I'm always learning, and that means that I can't decide to skip a day of education for myself. If something happens in the news, I have to know. And not only do I have to know what it is, but I have to know about the subject well enough to be able to explain it to somebody who may never have heard of it before. So, since I have to explain to adults and to children, I have to learn a lot of different ways of explaining something, and that means I have to get creative. Now, even though I teach science, I wasn't originally trained as a scientist. I was actually a filmmaking major. I was an English major in college, and I expected to use my skills to make documentary films teaching people about things in the world. So in a way, I wanted to use filmmaking to teach people, and it turns out that I'm teaching people, but not with movies, instead with hands-on scientific demonstrations. But in this time, because of the pandemic, I've actually made a lot of videos and movies. So in a way, a lot of my old skills are becoming important in a different way than I expected for this job. So remember that whatever you study in college or school, you may decide that you do something totally different. It doesn't mean that you wasted any time. Any amount of education is valuable, and my studies as an English major have definitely made it easier for me to communicate to my audience and make it easier for me to come up with narratives and stories to help them understand and better remember what happens in the scientific world. So, a storyteller and a science teacher. I guess you could say that I do both at my job. Now, this is not a typical time, but in previous times, I would get all those kids that come on field trips in a school bus. Maybe you've been one of those kids in the past. They show up in the bus and they get out, and we have usually about an hour with them in a class to talk about a huge variety of subjects. I teach on concepts such as climate change, or the animals that live in the woods, or how creatures survive the winter, or how to learn the constellations in the sky. And all of these subjects are fun for me. So the best thing about my job is that I'm doing what I love. I love to learn, number one. So anything that allows me to learn is a great thing. And I have to learn for this job. And because I love to learn, I think the reason why people think I do a good job here is because they see that I care. I'm enthusiastic about what I teach. Not because I'm acting that way, but because I am genuinely excited about all the amazing things that people discover. So I feel like that excitement about science is probably as important as anything else that I do. So, you don't have to be a scientist to be good at the job that I do. You have to be curious, you have to be passionate, and you have to be willing to talk for hours and hours to anybody, from the youngest preschoolers to the oldest citizens in our society, because that's the people who come to visit the Fairbanks Museum, and I try to make it a point to be good at talking to all of them. So, educationally, you don't have to be a scientist to do the job that I do. It will certainly help if you understand science and are very well versed in it. But I think that being a good communicator, a kind person, a patient person who's willing to listen to people and never, ever, ever make them feel bad because they don't understand something. That's one of the most important parts of my job. And I think there's a lot of people out there who might not even think of themselves as being good at science. But if you're good at listening to people, and you're good at explaining things, and you're good at making people feel smart and never, ever, ever trying to make them feel dumb, then you might be perfect for this job. After all, I saved the best for last. You were wondering what's my favorite thing here? Well, how many other people that you know get to teach using an Xbox controller and an iPad? Yes, I'm in the planetarium, so it wouldn't be right for me not to show you some of the things that we can do, because after all, in here, with the push of a button, I can leave the Earth behind. We can fly off into space. Let's see if I take us to another planet. So, think about that. Secret part of my job is that I get to be a virtual starship captain. And I get to fly to any planet and any corner of the universe that I want. And I usually have an audience with me under normal circumstances. Right now, we're doing a lot of this virtually, but all the same, I think it's a lot of fun that I get to take people off to different worlds and show them all of the wonder that's out there. Hey, you want to go to Saturn? No problem. It'd take about 10 years to get there with a rocket, but in the planetarium, it only takes a few seconds. Let's see if I can show you the rings. So, there, Saturn in a few seconds. Not so bad. Kind of fun to have this job. Let's see if it looks better with this light off. I hope to see you soon. Good luck with all your education, and keep looking up.